Starting the topic, that is constructor, right? Today we will discuss about the constructor. So constructor means we are constructing something, or we are constructs the values, right, related with that object. Whatever object we are using or we are creating, that means we are simply working on that values, which after that we are creating objects. So simply we can use that constructor for create the values or object, right, of object of any class. Clear? This is the constructor basically, right? And constructor which says that having same name as your class name, right? Whatever class name you have to pass in your program, that is considered as your constructor, right? So constructor, suppose we are taking here as a name class, that is, suppose I am taking here the test class, right? This is your class. Now I'm creating that object of this class in public static void main or in main function. So this is the procedure to write or to procedure to create the object, right? So I'm taking here that class object, the T is your object, right? So see, this is not the correct method to create the object like this in Java, because we are studying the Java language. This is the creating actually the object, but we are not allocating here the memory. So we are supposed to allocate the memory for this object. So how it will do? Right? I'll do here one thing, that is new operator, or will by using that new operator I'm giving the memory for that object, that is test T, right? This is the creation of object, but only the creation, not giving the memory to that object. After that new operator using here, I'm giving that memory to that object also, right, by using new operator. Clear? So this is the basic syntax to create the object and giving the memory for that object only, right? And see, we are talking about the constructor, and constructor calls when we are creating the object. It is called default constructor, and Java provides you the default constructor. Java provides you the default constructor. Means, see, here I'm using that class test, right? See, the name of class is same as the function name. Your function name over here is test, right? So test is same as your class name. So this is the constructor, right? This is the constructor. Means this test over here which I am writing here, that works as the constructor. So this is called as the default constructor which Java provides you. Default constructor. Clear? So whenever we are creating the object by using this syntax, this will automatically calls the constructor. This is the default constructor which provides Java language, right? So that is the having name, same name as your class name, first point. And second point, we have second point we have that constructor using that access specifiers, right? Constructor using the access specifiers, and access specifier means what? We have to specify the accessibility, means we are using what kind of data. It is depend upon the specification of your data, means we are working with integer type, we are working with float type. That was the in C++, but we are talking about the Java. That means we are talking about access specification of your data, that is depend upon your accessibility, that is the visibility also you can say it. And we have the three types of specifiers. One is public, another is private, and protected, right? These three type of access specifiers will use in the Java language, right? And constructor can use by using this three access specifiers, means constructor ये तीनों access specifiers use कर सकता है, right? So public, private and protected. If somebody asks you the question that can we use private constructor in a class? Yes, we can use the private constructor also. This is how you can access that constructor, that private constructor outside the class also. That is the private constructor, by using some methodology which I will tell you about this. That is the protected. And last one is your default constructor, right? Default constructor. Clear? Next is your, this is about access specifications. Next, how to use constructor. How to use constructor, or how to initialize the object. How to initialize the object. Clear? So first of all, we have to know about the constructor again, which I have already told you about this constructor definition. Now we have to define that object initialization. So we have three types of object initialization, means we can use three ways to initialize the object. We can use three ways to initialize the object. Number one is by using reference variable. By using reference variable. Because constructor, what we are doing with the constructor is basically using for the initializing your object, right? Because we know that object is what? Properties along with their functions, right? And we have to focus on that properties, right? So हमें constructor के basis पे क्या करना है? उस object की properties पर workout करना, उस object की properties को initialize करना, because we are having a number of objects in a class, suppose, right? So initialization will be done, then of course we can judge or we can initiate any objects in a class. मीन्स आप किसी भी क्लास के अंदर ऑब्जेक्ट्स होते हैं तो उसके ऑब्जेक्ट्स के बेसिस पर ये बता सकते हैं दिस इज वन ऑब्जेक्ट, दिस इज टू, दिस इज थ्री एंड सो ऑन. Likewise, your student details, if I have a student details in a particular format, like serial number, student name and the student branch, likewise, right? So if I have the entries of all these things, then I can judge or I can identify easily, right? So this is how why we are using the initialization or constructor over there. ठीक है, for initializing the objects. So we have three ways to initialize the object. Number one is by using reference variable. First is your reference variable and second one is your method. By using method. and third one is your constructor, which we are supposed to do in a class. Constructor, right? So number one, by using reference variable. Okay, means we have number one, reference variable. Reference variable. Reference variable says that we have the program like class test, right? And in public static void main, this form says that public static void main, right? And a string, this is your class. And remember that thing, the class name always be in capital letter, first letter must be in capital. And reference variable, that means whatever variable we have in a class should be refer to a value. मीन्स आप किसी भी क्लास की प्रॉपर्टीज़ के अंदर जो प्रॉपर्टीज़ आपने दी हुई है उसमें आपने क्या किया, रेफर किया है वैल्यू को, राइट? दैट वैल्यू इज द मीन्स वो आपकी क्या कहलाती है, रेफरेंस वेरिएबल कहलाता है. उसको हम इस तरह से रिप्रेजेंट कर सकते हैं, द स्ट्रिंग नेम और वेट. In this only string name is equal to ABC, right? Name is string, right? And string always comes in double quotes, okay? And integer id is equal to 101. This is another variable, so we are refer that variable into some value. हमने किसी भी वेरिएबल को एक रेफर किया है कि वो एक वैल्यू होल्ड कर रहा है, मीन्स दिस वेरिएबल इज होल्डिंग द वैल्यू ओवर देयर, राइट? दिस इज द रेफरेंस वेरिएबल. एक्चुअली this variable works over here as a reference variable. Clear? So constructor says that if we have the employee, or if we have the, suppose wait, I'm taking here another example. Suppose employee, this is your employee class, right? So I'm creating the object E1 for the employee class, right? So this employee class or this object will hold the properties name and ID. For this basically हम एक employee की बात कर रहे हैं. If we are saying that we have number of employees in a class, or we have number of objects in a class, right? So this properties will be same for every objects. These properties will be same for every object if we are working on one object, 2, 3, multiple objects. So the name, ID. Clear? See, the name is, which I have declaring over there, that is ABC. This will pass into this one for E1 object, right? Similar, this ID will pass into this one. Clear? So we are talking about another object, so another object also same will take that same values, right? Same values, that is ABC and 101, ABC 101. So see, this is the problem actually, because we have multiple objects in a class, but that objects are taking same values for that properties. So this is the problem actually. So we need to initialize that object for that one. Means we are initializing that object E1, so that maybe it will change by some values. So this is the problem actually, and this method, that reference variable, we cannot use in this manner, right? So this is the way, actually first way we can write the program. Yes.
Are these all of the things you are writing in the system main? These are under the main function or excluding?
No, excluding, because main function will declaring the objects or something else, or we will call that by using objects. That even suppose I am creating the objects over here, that employee E1 is equal to new employee, and that the name E1 dot test, E1 dot employee. Again I'll create another object for this class. Yes, okay, this will this will not change actually, this is not changing. This E1 is taking for the values name, ID, ABC and 101, and this E2 again it will take the values ABC and 101, and this E3 same, means the value will not be changing. Yes, okay, so this will not work for, this will not work for the first concept or first method, that is by using reference variable. Now second, we have the by using method. By using method we can initiate or we can initialize the object. We'll see. By using method, right? So method means we are creating the object in public static void main function, because whenever we will create the object always comes in a main method. जब भी हम क्लास का ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएट करते हैं वो हमेशा कहाँ आता है, मेन फंक्शन में आता है, राइट, बाय यूजिंग मेथड. सो दिस ARGS so I am creating the object for employee class by using new operator employee. See, the name of this is same as your class name, that is the default constructor. Okay, so now I'm using this name is equal to ABC, E1 dot ID is equal to 101, right? See, this is for only E1 object.
We are allotting the names.
Yes, we are allotting the names, or we are, suppose that we are having number of employees in a class. So these two lines will come again and again for employees number. How many employees we have in a class, these two lines will come again and again. So the line of code will increase, the efficiency of your code will be decreased by writing this number of codes. Yes, so this method, this by using method is not efficient way to write or to initialize your object. This is not best way actually, right? So we'll not work on this, because we cannot write these things again and again. See, the number of lines will be increased, because we have 50 number of employees in a class, then we cannot write these two lines again and again. So the efficient code will not produce here, or the program or the line of code will be increased. That's why this is not efficient way to initialize your object. Got it? Clear? Okay. Next is third one, that is by using constructor. see, this is the main actually what I want to say you about this constructor. Actually, what constructor will do initialize the object. Means we are supposed to, we are having a number of employees, a number of students, right, in a class. Then I'll suppose that first one I'll be initialize that object, and it will take accordingly, right? So it will changing accordingly according to your parameters or according to your whatever properties you are passing in the program. See, so suppose we are constructor that constructor is for employee. So employee E1 is equal to new employee. So I'm going to pass here that ABC101. See what it will do. Means this E1 will print the value of ABC as named name, and this 101 as named ID, right? That was the property actually for the employee class. So again I can change this by creating another object, that is employee PQR. Whatever you want to go with the property changing accordingly. Means you are supposed to be change that properties 1, 2, 3 multiple objects you can pass in this parameter. Yes.
We have to declare the parameters also for
Yes, of course. Means this is the calling actually. This is the calling, and this calling is called as the function calling, and we have to declare this function, we have to define this function also in a class. So you have to declare the class first. The class is employee class, and in a class will pass the parameters or properties of this class object. That string name is equal to, sorry, not equal, and integer ID, right? This is the variable declaration or properties, right? Now I'll use here another public void will not come here because the constructor does not return any value. कंस्ट्रक्टर कोई वैल्यू रिटर्न नहीं करता है, ठीक है? तो यहाँ पर हम void नहीं लगा सकते, तो यहाँ पर आप क्या लगाएंगे? एम्प्लॉय. दिस इज द कंस्ट्रक्टर, एंड व्हाट काइंड ऑफ कंस्ट्रक्टर? पैरामीटराइज्ड कंस्ट्रक्टर, राइट? वी हैव two types of constructor. No argument constructor means default, you can say it, means any no argument we are passing in the brackets, right? Whereas in parameterized we are passing that parameter into that constructor, parameter or arguments. We are passing the arguments or parameter in that constructor name. So see, this is the constructor and we are passing that constructor string s. This is your another variable, right? String s and integer I. Okay, this is the how we are working with the constructor, parameterized constructor, for initializing the object's properties, right? So this s will assign the value of name, right? And this I will assign the value of ID. Clear? Okay. Now in main function will have to call these operation, that is employee or constructor.
Apparently, I give a kid return के लिए कर रही है.
No,
Why do you say
no, this is constructor actually, क्योंकि constructor does not return any value. कंस्ट्रक्टर जो है कोई भी वैल्यू रिटर्न नहीं करता है, सो वी नो नीड टू राइट हेयर द रिटर्न जीरो एंड ऑल. इट विल डिपेंड अपॉन योर टाइप, विथ काइंड ऑफ डेटा टाइप you are using here. It will change accordingly in Java language specifically. In C++ you need to write that one, but in Java there is no need to write. So in PSVM, which I have already written in earlier, right? So that is string args, and next is employee class. By creating the object e1 is equal to new employee, that e must be capital always, right? e जो है हमेशा क्या होगा, कैपिटल में रहेगा. क्लास नेम, so that abc comma 101, right? See, I can create more than employee. e2 is equal to new employee, suppose the name is pqr and the id is 102, right? Likewise you can change accordingly how many objects we are creating in that class. So I can suppose to change that accordingly because we are initializing that one by one. तो आपने सबसे पहले इनिशलाइज कर दिया ऑब्जेक्ट की वैल्यूज को, तो अब ज़रूरत नहीं है कि उसको बार बार इनिशलाइज करना. अब आप अकॉर्डिंगली चेंज कर सकते हैं. 101 इज योर फर्स्ट वन and 102 is another, 103 and likewise. Okay, this is how we can use the constructor, or we can initialize the objects. Clear? Now next is, so see, it is not necessary to write a constructor for a class because Java is providing your default constructor. So no need to write constructor every time, because you are supposed to create that one, right? That employee e1 is equal to new employee, then bracket. That new employee bracket is the syntax for to create the object. That is syntax, and that will create automatically in Java. Clear? Okay, next is types of constructor. We have seen already. Number one is no argument constructor, and number two is parameterized constructor, right? So no argument constructor, that is the example of no argument which I have seen earlier. This is the parameterized constructor actually, in which we are providing the parameters. By accessing that parameters we can access the variables or properties. Clear? Next, third one is copy constructor. So copy constructor means we have to create the copy of existing object, right? Means कोई object already exist करता है तो उसकी हमें कॉपी क्रिएट करनी पड़ती है. Means we are passing the value as a parameter in a constructor. कंस्ट्रक्टर में हम क्या पास कर रहे हैं, उसकी ऑब्जेक्ट की कॉपी पास कर रहे हैं, so that we can make a copy of that object, right? So we have parameterized constructor, because this is the parameterized, you can say it how, this employee, right? This is a constructor. This is the method actually how we can pass that copy of that object. This is the object actually. C or even, don't get confused, even, right? The copy of parameter it's this and represents the address, right? Means the address fetch, that whenever you want to save that file and that particular address, that address will be, or it will fetch the value, or it will fetch the object's properties from there you want to be copy to created. जिस भी कॉपी को आप क्रिएट करना चाहते हैं जिस ऑब्जेक्ट की, तो उसका एड्रेस पता होना चाहिए कि किस एड्रेस पर वो कॉपी रखी हुई है, ये ऑब्जेक्ट रखा हुआ है, उसकी कॉपी आपको क्रिएट करनी है, राइट? सो बाय यूजिंग दिस यू कैन एक्सेस द कॉपी ऑफ द ऑब्जेक्ट, एग्जिस्टिंग ऑब्जेक्ट. क्लियर? सो we'll have another example for the parameterized constructor and default constructor, and these parameter and default constructor merging into one topic, that is constructor overloading. Constructor overloading says that we have one program which consists these three is overloading, right? So take the example, we have the class for overloading, right? For overloading I'm talking about the constructor overloading. Constructor overloading which consists these three: default, parameterized, that is overloading. So class student and integer id, string name, now student and see, default constructor will always take the default values, right, of any properties which you are passing here. What kind of value the name is? String type, and a string type default value of a string is null. Okay, so whenever we have to execute this default constructor, this string or this name will take default values, right? And default value for string is null, whereas default value of integer is 0. Clear? So जब भी आप इस, that's why we have to initialize the objects so that the value will change, or the value will changing according to user. ठीक है? Why we are using the constructor? Got the point? So that we can initialize the object, or we can change the values of that objects. Clear? So if we are declaring, we are used to that default constructor, then it will take no need to write again it's here, because we have already written. So name is equal to null and id is equal to 0. So if you are not writing this one, this will consider automatically. This will consider automatically in Java if you are not writing this null and 0. ये मैंने आप सिर्फ इसलिए लिखा है ताकि मैं आपको समझा सकूं, right? So no need to write this one. Next is student. This is the default constructor, and for the next one, string s comma integer I. So name is equal to s, right? Name is equal to s. This is actually the parameters, what kind of parameter it is? It is formal or actual? This is formal parameters, the copy of parameter actually. This is not actual parameter. Actual parameter or actual properties are, these are the actual properties. This is the copy of parameters, because this S is not actual, this I is not actual. Actual is name and ID, right? We are supposed to work on this formal copy of parameters. Clear? So in this, after that, the ID is equal to I. The next is public static void main, that is main function by which execution of program will be started. String args. Now we'll have to create the object of that class employee. E1 is equal to new employee. Now I'll pass here the first one is ABC and second one is 101. Likewise, we have to create the another object E2. How many objects you want to create in a class? You can create according to employee, and you can change or you can initiate the properties. Clear? This is the final actually, right? Yes. Yes, you can create. It will take by default. It will take by default, which I have told you earlier, that if you are not taking here as public, private, protected, it will take as by default constructor. So we have four type of access specifiers in a constructor. The first is private, public, protected and default. So if you are not writing here that any one of specifiers, it will take automatically, that is default constructor. Okay. So next, yes, this is the value actually which we are passing here, that this is the actual parameters and this is the formal parameters. So actual parameters will, or this employee will call this constructor because of parameterized, right? If we will call C E3 new employee, right, that E3 object will not have any parameters over there, right? It will call automatically, but their answer will be null or 0 for that particular object's properties what we are using here, that name and ID. Clear? Whereas in parameterized constructor, will go through in that parameters or copy parameterized constructor, then it will see the name, that S, so this S will assign the name and this I will assign the ID, and this will patch out from here the name and ID, right? It will display your output. Okay, and you can change it with, or this program you can change it with the take by some other function also, that is display function, right? That display function will display you the output, because this is not displaying your output. This is how actually we are working on with the constructor. If you want to display your output, then you have to declare another function before this one, main function. मेन फंक्शन से पहले आपको एक फंक्शन लेना होगा, डिस्प्ले फंक्शन, जो आपकी स्ट्रिंग नेम और आईडी को डिस्प्ले करवा दे स्क्रीन के ऊपर, ठीक है? तो उसके लिए हमारे पास एक फंक्शन आता है, दैट इज डिस्प्ले फंक्शन, राइट? एंड डिस्प्ले फंक्शन विल कॉल बाय यूजिंग दिस वन. डिस्प्ले फंक्शन को आप इस तरीके से कॉल करेंगे. क्लियर है? this display function will display the output on your screen. जो भी स्क्रीन के ऊपर आपके आउटपुट है उसको डिस्प्ले कर देगा. ठीक है. This println system.out.println, yes, in this. No need to write the system.out. If you are taking here the main display before this main void display, then we'll have to write here system.out.println, whatever you are telling me that syntax, right, that will come before the main function, and you need to write that main function. You need to call this main display function in main function, because function we are know about that function. What is function? Function which have the components. The one is declaration, another is definition, and third one is calling. So if you have to declare your function and before this main function, so you need to write you need to call that function only in main function. अगर डेफिनेशन आपने मेन से बाहर दे दी है तो ज़रूरत नहीं है, उसको सिर्फ कॉल करना होता है मेन फंक्शन में. सो दिस इज द कॉलिंग ऑफ डिस्प्ले फंक्शन, एंड दिस इज द डेफिनेशन ऑफ डिस्प्ले फंक्शन बिफोर मेन फंक्शन, एंड यू कैन use it here as a declaration, but no need to write the change or enhance your code extra line. Means if we have the extra line of code, the efficiency of your code will be decreased automatically, right? So कोशिश ये करनी है, that good practice to write the line of code in minimum number so that your code will be efficient. Clear? So this is how what constructor is, and this is how constructor we are using, and we are covering this topic, that constructor type, that is no argument constructor and parameterized constructor. Clear?